The air in Redemption Creek doesn't just carry dust, it carries secrets. And on this day, it carried the smell of death. It came in on the back of a fever so hot it seemed to bend the light, and it was aimed at a man who should not have been there. A quiet herbalist, Elara Vance, was the only one who saw the truth. She knew the difference between a simple sickness and a soul being torn from its body. But what she didn't know was that a pack of riders, led by a man with ice in his veins, was thundering toward them, and the fever was the least of their problems. This isn't just a story of a rescue, it's the story of a war fought not with bullets, but with roots, whispers, and a bluff that held the fate of 2 peoples in its hands. The bell above Elara Vance's door was a liar. It chimed with a delicate silver ting that promised comfort, tea, and polite society. It promised nothing of the woman who owned the shop, a woman who smelled of yarrow and bitterroot, and who knew that the same plant that eased a cough could, in the right dosage, stop a heart. Elara was not a quiet woman by choice, but by design. Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, was a place that rewarded loudness with shallow graves. The town was a scab on the high desert, perched precariously between the settlers' ambition and the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Diné, Navajo lands. You survived here by shrinking, by making yourself small, by becoming as unnoticeable as the grey-green sagebrush that dotted the hills. Her shop, Vance's Apothecary and Sundries, was her fortress. It was a narrow, deep room lined with shelves of glass jars, their contents casting stained glass shadows in the late afternoon sun. Amber bottles of tinctures, bundles of dried desert marigold, pearly white datura flowers, marked with a stark poison. And in the very back, her prized collection, a mortar and pestle made of heavy, veined granite, and a small, leather-bound book her grandmother had started back in the damp green hills of the east, a world away from this sun-scorched land. Elara was grinding silverleaf, its fuzzy leaves releasing a sharp, clean scent when the town's fragile peace tore open. It wasn't a gunshot. It was the sound before the gunshot, a sudden, systemic silencing. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer ceased mid-swing. The tinny piano in the Last Chance saloon went quiet. The high-pitched laughter of the O'Malley children, usually a constant irritation, vanished. Elara moved to the window, her hands, stained green at the cuticles, wiped on her apron. They came from the south, a dark smudge of movement against the red mesas. 10, maybe 12 riders. They weren't cavalry. Their lines were too loose, too arrogant. They weren't a posse. There was no frantic urgency. This was a hunt. They rode into the single, dusty main street not as men, but as an occupying force. Their leader was a man whose reputation preceded him like a winter storm. Silas Croft. Croft was a man carved from bad materials. He was tall in the saddle, wearing a black duster that seemed to drink the sunlight. He dismounted not at the sheriff's office, but in the very center of the street, as if to claim it. His face, visible under the brim of his hat, was a map of old hatreds, dominated by a thick, scarred upper lip. He dropped his reins and walked into the saloon, his spurs not ringing, but crunching on the boardwalk. His men fanned out. They were Croft's Regulators, a name they'd given themselves after massacring a band of Yavapai near the Verde River, claiming they were regulating a dispute. They were bounty hunters without the paperwork, murderers with a thin veneer of justification. Elara watched them. She saw one of them, a young man with a face like a mean weasel, kick a water trough just to watch the wood splinter. She saw another walk up to Jedediah Stokes, the town's tanner, who was nervously rolling a barrel of hides onto the boardwalk. Jedediah was a good man, which in Redemption Creek meant he was a perpetually frightened man. He was thin, stooped, and smelled of the lie and blood that were the tools of his trade. The regulator, a brute named Harlan, backhanded Jedediah's hat off his head. "Seen any strays, Tanner?" Harlan's voice was a wet gravel. No, sir," Jedediah stammered, his eyes on the dust. Just my hides. Workin'." "Heard you trade with the Navajo," Harlan sneered, spitting a stream of tobacco juice that landed perilously close to Jedediah's boot. "Heard you like 'em." "I trade with who?" "Whoever has good skins, sir. Just trying to make a living." Harlan laughed and shoved Jedediah against the barrel. "Keep your eyes peeled, skin man. We're looking for a specific hide, a red one." The men cackled. Jedediah, shaking, just nodded and tried to disappear into the wall of his own shop. Elara turned from the window, her jaw tight. She hated them. She hated their casual cruelty, the way they took up all the air in the town. But more than that, a cold knot of professional curiosity had formed in her gut. She had seen Jedediah, and as he'd turned, shoving the heavy barrel into his workshop, she'd seen something the regulator had missed. Jedediah was terrified, yes, but he was also meticulous. He never left his tools out. Yet, on the boardwalk, just inside the wide-open door of the tannery, lay a small, buckskin pouch, the kind used for medicine, and next to it, almost invisible in the shadows, was a dark, wet smear. It wasn't tannin, it wasn't lye. Elara knew the color of blood when she saw it, and she knew the smell of fever sweat, a rank, metallic odor that was, at this very moment, faintly discernible under the scent of her silver leaf. Jedediah wasn't just scared of the riders. He was scared for something. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and orange, Silas Croft emerged from the saloon. He walked to the center of the street and unrolled a canvas sign. He nailed it to the town's message board with the point of his bowie knife, the thud echoing across the silent street. "Wanted 500 gold Hastine, chief of the Red Mesa Navajo, for murder and sedition." Elara's blood went cold. $500. That was enough to make a brother kill a brother. That was enough to burn Redemption Creek to the ground. The hunt was on, and Elara had a sickening premonition that the fox was already in the henhouse. The town held its breath. As dusk settled, a thick, oppressive quiet took over, broken only by the loud, false bravado of Croft's men who had command of the saloon's whiskey. Their laughter was sharp and dangerous. No one else was on the street. Sheriff Brody, a man who believed his tin star was for decoration, had locked himself in his office, claiming paperwork. Elara waited. She waited until the moon was high and cold, a white scar in the sky. She waited until the last of Croft's men had staggered from the saloon to the livery, where they'd rolled out their bedrolls. She locked her shop, the click of the bolt sounding like a gunshot in the silence. She didn't take a lantern. A lantern made you a target. Instead, she moved through the alleyways behind the main street, a shadow among shadows. Her soft-soled shoes made no sound on the packed earth. The tannery was at the end of the street, its location dictated by the stench. As she approached, the overwhelming smell of lye, curing leather, and the faint, coppery tang of old blood filled the air. The big double doors were barred from the inside. She didn't knock. She went around the back to a small, warped door that led to Jedediah's living quarters. She tapped, a specific rhythm. 3 quick, 1 slow. A signal she and Jedediah had established years ago when she'd treated his wife for the lung fever that eventually took her. A long silence. Then, the scraping of a bar being lifted. The door opened a crack. Jedediah Stokes's face was a white, terrified mask in the moonlight, "Elara? Christ almighty, what are you doing? Go home! You can't be here." "I saw the blood, Jed," she whispered, her voice firm. "I smell the fever. Who's in there?" Nothing. No one. A stray dog. Bit by a snake. Elara pushed the door. Jedediah, weak with fear and exhaustion, stumbled back. "Don't lie to me, Jedediah. Not tonight. Not with Silas Croft in town. You're hiding someone. And by the looks of that wanted poster, I have a good idea who." She stepped inside. The room was small, sparse, a cold stove, a single cot, but the air was thick. It was the smell she'd scented earlier, magnified 100 times, the smell of infection, the smell of a body at war with itself. "Where is he?" she commanded, her quietness gone, replaced by a surgeon's authority. Jedediah's face crumpled. Tears streamed down his leathered cheeks. "In the cellar, under the curing vats." "Oh, Elara, I'm a dead man. We're all dead." "Not yet." She lit a small candle from her apron pocket, its tiny flame battling the oppressive darkness. "Show me." He led her through the tannery proper. Hides hung from the rafters like skinned ghosts. The floor was slick. He pulled aside a stack of raw, salted pelts, revealing a heavy trapdoor. He heaved it open. The smell that rose from the darkness was nearly overwhelming. It was the smell of gangrene. "Go back to your room, Jed," Elara said, her voice softening. "Keep watch. If you hear anything, drop that heavy tanning hammer on the floor. Twice." "What do you—" "Go." She took the candle and descended the rickety steps into the small, earthen cellar. It was meant for storing finished hides, keeping them cool. Now it was an infirmary. In the corner, on a pile of burlap sacks, lay a man. He was large, even lying down. His body was powerful, though now it was slick with a sickening sweat. His face, all strong angles and high cheekbones, was contorted in delirium. His hair, long and black, was matted with grime and straw. This was not just a Navajo man. This was, unmistakably, Chief Hastin. He was muttering, his voice a low, guttural rasp. Words in his own language, harsh and desperate. Elara set the candle down and got to work. Her hands were professional, impersonal. She did not see a wanted man. She saw a patient. The fever was raging. His skin was burning to the touch. She gently pushed aside the rough wool blanket covering him. The source of the infection was obvious. A ragged, weeping wound on his left side, just above the hip. It wasn't a bullet hole, not clean. It was a tear, a puncture. "A lance," she whispered to herself, or maybe a broken piece of rebar from a cattle fence. It was deep, but that wasn't the worst part. The flesh around the wound was puffy, discolored. A sickening, purplish-black network of veins spidered out from it, a clear sign of sepsis. Blood poisoning. He had maybe 12 hours, maybe less. She gently probed the wound. Hastin cried out, a raw, animal sound, and his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His eyes snapped open. They were no longer delirious. For a split second, they were sharp, clear, and filled with an intensity that stopped her breath. He was lucid. He looked at her, then at his own hand on her arm, and let go, his strength vanishing as quickly as it came. "They said," he rasped, his voice cracking. "The tanner, a friend." "He is," Elara said, her voice calm, projecting a confidence she did not feel. "He saved your life by hiding you. Now, I'm going to save it for real. Croft." The name was a curse on his lips. "He's here. He's looking for you. Why?" Hastin closed his eyes, a spasm of pain crossing his features. His brother, Jacob. They ambushed my son. My son was only 16. Jacob Croft, he held him. He took a ragged, shallow breath. "I killed him. I killed Jacob Croft with my own knife. It was not a good death." Ilara sat back on her heels. This wasn't a bounty hunt. This was a blood feud. Silas Croft didn't want the $500. He wanted revenge. He would not just kill Hastine, he would make him suffer. "The tanner, Jedediah," Hastine whispered, slipping back into the fever. "He owes me. My wife. She saved his wife from the bear. A life for a life." It clicked. Jedediah's wife hadn't died of lung fever. Not at first. Ilara remembered the story now, years ago. A bear attack. Jedediah's wife had been mauled, and a Navajo woman had appeared from the trees, packing the wounds with a specific, dark mud and herbs that had stopped the bleeding and saved her life. That woman must have been Hastine's wife. A life for a life. And now, the debt was being called in. Hastine's body arched in a violent shiver. His breathing hitched, becoming rapid and shallow. "All right," Ilara said, more to herself than the delirious man. "A life for a life. So be it." She knew what she needed. It wasn't in her bag. It was back at her shop, and to get it, she would have to cross the street again, a street patrolled by men who would shoot her for sport, let alone for helping the man they hunted. Ilara climbed the cellar stairs, her mind a cold, clear ledger. On one side, the patient. Sepsis, advanced. Massive infection, raging fever. 12 hours. On the other, the obstacles. Silas Croft, 10 heavily armed men, a terrified town, and Sheriff Brody, who was functionally useless. She found Jedediah in his living quarters, pacing the small room like a caged animal. "He's dying, Jed," she said flatly. We have to give him up," Jedediah whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "We tell Croft. We say we found him. He'll be grateful. He'll spare us." "He won't," Ilara snapped, and the sharpness of her own voice surprised her. "You saw that man's face. He won't be grateful. He'll kill Hastine on your floor, and then he'll kill you for touching him. He'll kill me for being here. You think that $500 poster is for capture? It's a death warrant, and Croft wants to be the one to serve it." She grabbed Jedediah by his thin shoulders. "Listen to me. You are a dead man if you do nothing. You are a dead man if you give him up. Your only chance, our only chance, is if I heal him, and if we get him out of here before Croft finds him." "Heal him? Ilara, the smell, it's sepsis. I can fight it, but I need my supplies." She walked to his front window, which looked out onto the main street. The moon cast a silver, ghostly light on the dust. The saloon was dark, but a single lantern burned in the livery stable. A sentry. "I have to go back to my shop." "You're mad," Jedediah breathed. "Harlan and Pike are over there. They'll see you." "They're drunk," Ilara said, "and they're looking for a Navajo chief, not a quiet herbalist. They'll see what they expect to see." She pulled her darkest shawl over her head. "I need 3 things from you. First, boil water. All of it. As hot as you can get it. Scour your biggest lye bucket, clean it until you drink from it, and fill it with the boiling water. Second, I need strips of cloth, your cleanest, newest linen. Tear them, I'll need a lot. And third, pray, Jedediah. Pray I don't get caught." She didn't wait for a reply. She slipped out his back door and melted back into the alley. She moved with a hunter's patience. She waited for the livery sentry, Harlan, to turn his back, his attention focused on a bottle he'd stolen from the saloon. She crossed the alley in a single, silent rush. Now she was in the narrow space between the general store and her own shop. The problem was the main street. She had to cross 20 feet of open, moonlit ground to get to her own front door. She crouched in the darkness, her heart a cold stone in her chest. She remembered her father, a man who had preached temperance and died of a fever. A real doctor had bled him for, ignoring her grandmother's pleas to use willow bark. The doctor had called her grandmother a witch. Ilara had been 10. She'd sworn then that she would never trust a man with a piece of paper over a woman with roots. Harlan laughed, a barking, drunken sound from the livery. He was telling a story to the horses. Now. She didn't run. Running attracts the eye. She walked, a calm, measured pace, as if she'd just forgotten to lock up. She kept her head down, her shawl hiding her face. She fumbled with the key, her hands shaking for the first time. The sound of the key scraping in the lock was a thunderclap. Harlan stopped talking. Ilara froze. She heard the scrape of his boot in the stable. "Who's out there?" he called. She forced herself to turn. She let the shawl fall slightly. "Just me, Mr. Harlan," she said, her voice pitched to be timid and apologetic. "Left my day's earnings on the counter." "Silly me." Harlan squinted into the darkness. He saw a small woman, a shopkeep. "Nothing." "Get on," he slurred, "and lock your door. Ain't safe with heathens about." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." She slipped inside and bolted the door. She leaned against it, the wood cool against her forehead, and let out a single, shuddering breath. Then she got to work. In the pitch black of her shop, she moved by touch and smell alone. She didn't dare light a lamp. From a high shelf, her fingers found the clay jar of dried yarrow, Achillea millefolium. Woundwort, for staunching the blood, for cleansing. From a low drawer she pulled a bundle of white willow bark, Salix alba, the source of salicin, to fight the fever, to ease the agonizing pain. And then, from a locked wooden box under the counter, she retrieved her most powerful and most dangerous remedies. First, a small dark vial of tincture of echinacea, cone flower. Not for a wound, but to be taken internally, to rally the body's own defenses. Finally, she took the thing she had come for, a small, dry, unassuming fungus, penicillium, a blue-green mold she carefully cultivated on slices of old bread in a damp box, a secret her grandmother had called the breath of life. She grabbed a bottle of her strongest grain alcohol, her smallest, sharpest knife, and a new bar of lye soap. She bundled it all in a dark cloth, unbolted the door, peeked out, and retraced her steps. The crossing was easier this time. Harlan was singing, a bawdy, tuneless song. When she returned to the tannery, Jedediah had the bucket of steaming water ready. He's worse, Ilara. His breathing, it's rattling." "Good," she said. Jedediah recoiled. "Good? It means the fight hasn't left him." She went down into the cellar. The air was hotter, the smell more potent. Hastin was convulsing, his teeth chattering, though his skin was on fire. "This is going to be hell, Chief," she whispered, laying out her tools on a clean cloth. "And you and I are going to have to walk through it together." First, she washed. She scrubbed her hands and forearms with the lye soap and the scalding water until her skin was raw. Then, she prepared the poultice. She crushed the yarrow and the willow bark in her granite mortar, adding a splash of the grain alcohol to make a thick, pungent paste. To this, she added a scraping of the precious penicillium mold. "Jedediah," she called, her voice echoing from the cellar. "Come down here and bring the knife from your belt." He appeared at the top of the stairs, shaking. I can't." "You will. I need you to hold him down. And I need your knife because it's the largest. I have to cut. The wound is poisoned. I have to open it." This was the part the real doctors in their fine coats never wanted to do. This was the butcher's work. Jedediah crept down the stairs. Ilara handed him the bottle of grain alcohol. "Give him this. Make him drink what he can." She held Hastine's head up. He was barely conscious. "Chief, Hastine, you must drink." He coughed, but he swallowed. Then she took Jedediah's large skinning knife and held the blade in the flame of her candle until the metal glowed dull red. She cooled it in the last of the grain alcohol. "Hold his arms, Jed. Pin them. No matter what he does, do not let him move." Jedediah, his face as pale as cheese, nodded and pinned the chief's powerful arms. Ilara took a deep breath. "May I be forgiven for this," she murmured, and she plunged the knife into the poisoned flesh. Hastine did not scream. A low, guttural groan ripped from his chest, a sound of such profound agony that Jedediah cried out and nearly let go. "Hold him," Ilara commanded, her voice a steel blade. She was not a person. She was a tool. Her hand was steady as she cut, widening the wound, her knuckles deep in the infected flesh. The stench of corruption, a foul, sweetish odor, filled the small cellar. "The water, Jed! The hot water!" She irrigated the wound, flushing the poison out with scalding water and lye soap. An agonizing process. Hastine's body arched, his powerful legs kicking. Jedediah threw his whole frail weight across the chief's chest, weeping. "It's all right, Jed," Ilara said, her voice dropping to a strange, hypnotic calm, the one she used for spooked horses and dying men. "It's the poison leaving. It has to come out." She worked for what felt like an hour, cutting, cleaning, flushing. The wound was now wider, more gruesome, but it was clean. The black-purple flesh was gone, replaced by raw red muscle and the white gleam of bone. Finally, she took the thick, dark poultice of yarrow, willow, and mold, and she packed it deep into the wound. Hastine, who had passed the threshold of pain into unconsciousness, only whimpered. She bound it tightly with the clean linen strips. "Now, the fever," she said, washing her hands in the bloody water. She forced the echinacea tincture, drop by drop, between the chief's cracked lips. "This will feed the fire. It will get worse before it gets better. His body must win. All we've done is give him the sword." She sat back on her heels. The candle guttered. She was covered in sweat, grime, and the blood of a man she was supposed to fear. "You stay here," she told Jedediah. "Give him sips of water. Keep him covered. I'm going to do what I do best. I'm going to listen." She left Jedediah, a terrified man given a sacred duty, and ascended into the pre-dawn grey. The town was beginning to stir. The first roosters were crowing, a sound of appalling normalcy. Ilara did not go home. She went to the one place in Redemption Creek more full of secrets than her own shop, the laundry. Ma. Higgins was already at work. She was a woman built like an oak barrel, with arms as red and tough as boiled beef. She was the town's confessor, its conscience, and its gossip. She washed the linen of the righteous and the sinful alike, and she knew who was bleeding, who was cheating, and who was scared. She was hanging a row of Sheriff Brody's shirts when Ilara slipped into the steamy washhouse. "You're out early, child," Ma Higgins said, not turning. "Or is it late?" "Silas Croft," Ilara said, no preamble. Ma Higgins's hands stopped. She turned. Her eyes, small and sharp, took in Ilara's appearance, the dirt, the dark stains on her apron, which Ma assumed was Herb's, the exhaustion, and the new, hard light in her eyes. "He's a bad one," Ma said. "His men, they're animals. That Harlan, he soiled one of the saloon girls. Thinks 'cause he paid for the whiskey, he bought the whole place." "He's looking for Hastine," Ilara said. "He's looking to kill Hastine," Ma corrected. "I washed his duster once, 2 years ago. The man had blood under his fingernails that wasn't his. What of it?" Ilara made a decision. It was the biggest gamble of her life. She trusted a woman who lived on whispers. "Hastine is here, in town." Ma Higgins's eyes widened, but she didn't gasp. She just nodded, as if a suspicion had been confirmed. "Where?" "Jedediah's, in the cellar." "That fool, that brave, stupid fool." "He's dying, Ma. I'm working on him, but I can't heal him if Croft finds him. Croft is tearing the town apart. He's offering blood money," Ma said. "He was in the saloon, flashing $500 gold. He says Hastine murdered his brother. He's pressing Brody. Brody, that man's spine is water. He'll fold. Croft will have his men search every building by noon." "Noon," Ilara whispered. "He'll be dead by noon if he's moved, and he'll be dead by noon if he's found. So we need a distraction," Ma said, her mind working as fast as Ilara's. "We can't fight 12 armed men, Ilara, not with roots." "No," Ilara said, a new idea blooming, cold and dangerous. "We can't fight them, but we can direct them. They're hunters. What do hunters follow?" "A trail," Ma breathed. "A trail. Whispers. You hear everything. I need you to start a new story." "What story?" "Not one story. A dozen. Hastine was seen riding west toward the Dragoon Mountains. No, he was seen heading north. His horse was lame. A rancher found a fresh Navajo campfire. He's paying for information. Let's give him so much information he chokes on it." Ma Higgins smiled. It was a terrifying sight. The O'Malley kids. They'll say anything for a nickel. Mrs. Gable at the general store. She'll swear she saw a savage peering in her window if it gets her attention. And Shadow. "Shadow?" Ilara asked. "Shadow is what I call him. The young stable hand at the livery. The one Croft's men beat up last night. He's quiet, hears everything. He's part Comanche, I think. He hates them. He'll help." "Go," Ilara said. "Tell them. Spread the word. Make them believe the fox is in the hills, not in the den. And you? I'm going back to the cellar. The fever will be at its peak. It's time to see if he lives or dies." Ilara slipped back to the tannery. As she passed the sheriff's office, she saw Sheriff Brody through the window. He wasn't doing paperwork. He was drinking, and on his desk, next to the bottle, was a single, shiny $20 gold eagle. Silas Croft had already been there. The betrayal had already begun. The cellar had become a pocket of hell. The air was so thick with the smells of fever and the pungent poultice that it was difficult to breathe. Hastine was no longer a man. He was a pure, primal force of sickness. He was burning, his body a furnace, his skin a roadmap of pain. He's seeing things," Jedediah whispered from his post in the corner. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. "He's speaking to his wife, to his son. It's the fever," Ilara said, dipping a cloth in the now tepid water and laying it on the chief's forehead. It sizzled. "The poison is in his blood. My medicine is in his blood. They are at war. His body is the battlefield." She checked the wound. The flesh was still red and angry, but the terrifying black-purple creep of the sepsis had stopped. The line was holding. The poultice was working. "Now we wait," she said. Outside, the town woke to a new, frantic energy. Ma Higgins and her network were astonishingly effective. It began with the O'Malley kids. They found a single turquoise bead, one Ma Higgins had lost from her own sewing box, out on the trail heading west. They ran to Sheriff Brody, who, drunk and eager to appease Croft, immediately reported it. Silas Croft, standing in the street, snarled, "West! He's on foot. He'd be easy track." "Ing." Then Mrs. Gable, her voice a shrill siren, announced to everyone in the general store that a tin of her finest peaches had been stolen from her back loading dock in the night. "Only a heathen would steal peaches when there's jerky," she'd declared. Her loading dock faced north. Harlan and Pike, Croft's meanest trackers, were dispatched. They found a single, moccasin-like footprint in the soft dust behind the store. It was, in fact, made by Shadow, the stable hand, who had wrapped his boot in a burlap sack. "He's splitting his trail, boss," Harlan reported back to Croft, who was now pacing in front of the saloon, his frustration mounting. "He's smart." "He's not smart, he's wounded," Croft spat. "A wounded animal doesn't run in 3 directions at once." He grabbed Sheriff Brody by his suspenders. "Your town is lying, Sheriff. They're hiding him. I want this place turned inside out. Every shed, every barn, every tannery." Brody's face went white. "Silas, I can't authorize. I'm not asking for your authorization, you yellow-bellied drunk," Croft roared, shoving him to the ground. "You, Pike, take 2 men. Start at that end of the street. I want every barrel kicked, every door opened. Harlan, you're with me. We'll start at this end. We meet in the middle. I want him by noon." In the cellar, Elara heard the heavy thud of boots on the boardwalk above. She heard the sound of a door being kicked open. The bakery. She heard a woman scream. "They're searching," Jedediah whimpered, curling into a ball. "They're coming." Elara looked at Hastine. His breathing had changed. The rattling was gone. It was replaced by a deep, slow, almost peaceful rhythm. She touched his forehead. The fire was gone. His skin was still hot, but it was the heat of a living man, not a furnace. It was damp, not with the slick, oily sweat of sepsis, but with clean, honest perspiration. His eyes opened. They were not clear, they were not sharp. They were clouded with exhaustion, pain, and a profound, bone-deep weariness. But they were lucid. He saw her. "The Ashkey," he whispered, his voice a dry crackle. "My boy." "He's not here," Elara said softly, her voice thick. "You are. You are in the tanner's cellar. You are safe, for now." Hastine looked at his side. He saw the clean, white linen. He tried to move, and a jolt of pain, sharp but clean, not the all-consuming fire of before, shot through him. "You saved me," he whispered. "I stopped the poison," she corrected. "The rest is up to you. Can you stand?" "No." A crash from above. It was next door, the general store. They were turning it over. The tannery was next. "Elara," Jedediah was sobbing now. "It's over. We're dead." "No," Elara said, and a new, terrible, cold calm settled over her. The kind of calm that comes when all good options are gone. "We are not dead. We just need a new story." She looked around the cellar. The vats, the hides, the tools. "Jedediah," she said, her voice sharp. "What is the worst thing in this tannery? The most dangerous thing? The one thing you are afraid of?" Jedediah looked up, his mind blank with terror. I don't know. The lie. It burns. No, something else. The hides. Where do you get them? Ranchers, hunters, the fort. Sometimes. Infected hides, Jed. What happens? Jedediah's eyes widened in dawning horror. He knew exactly what she meant. "Anthrax," he whispered. The wool sorter's disease. Last year. A cow died of it. We had to burn the whole carcass. They say it gets in the lungs. You're dead in 2 days. A bad death." "Yes," Elara said, a terrifying, thin-lipped smile on her face. "A very bad death." She grabbed her mortar and pestle. She still had a bit of silver leaf, some black cohosh, and a handful of dark, dried berries. She crushed them all together into a foul-smelling, dark grey powder. She poured it into a small, dark bottle. "What's that?" Jedediah asked. "This?" Ilara said, holding it up. "This is the cure, and it's also the plague." The trapdoor above them vibrated as heavy boots hit the tannery floor. "Hello," Silas Croft's voice boomed. "Tanner, show yourself!" "Jedediah, get up those stairs," Ilara commanded in a fierce whisper. "What?" "No, they know you're here. If you don't go up, they'll come down. Go, be terrified, it won't be hard, but do not tell them I am down here." "Do not tell them he is down here." "What do I say?" "Nothing, just let me listen." Jedediah, his knees knocking, climbed the stairs. He pushed open the trapdoor and stumbled onto the tannery floor, shielding his eyes from the daylight flooding in the open doors. Silas Croft was in the center of the room, flanked by Harlan. The air was thick with the dust motes stirred up by their entry. "Well, well, the skin man," Croft sneered. He was holding his bowie knife, tapping its flat side against his leather-clad thigh. "You're a hard man to find." I was cleaning the back," Jedediah stammered, his eyes darting to the stack of hides that normally covered the trapdoor, now pushed aside. Croft's eyes followed his. "Cleaning, right. What's in the cellar, Tanner?" "No, nothing. Hides, just storage. It's cool down there." "I'll bet it is," Croft said, walking slowly toward the opening. He sniffed the air. "Smells ripe." "What's that smell, Harlan?" Harlan, a man who lived by his nose, stepped closer. "Smells like iron, old blood, and something sick." "Jedediah," Ilara called from the darkness of the cellar. Her voice was not a whisper. It was calm, clear, and projected. "Is that gentleman bothering you?" Croft froze. He spun toward the cellar opening. He hadn't expected this. He drew his revolver. "Who's down there?" he roared. "Show yourself." "I don't think I will," Ilara's voice replied, still strangely calm. "And I'd advise you not to come down. The air down here is delicate." A new figure appeared in the tannery doorway, blocking the light. "Ma!" "Higgins." She was holding a heavy laundry basket. "Sheriff Brody sent me," she announced, her voice booming. "Said you men were thirsty. I brought water." She was lying, but she said it with such authority that Croft was momentarily distracted. "Get out, old woman," Harlan snarled. "Not until I give the tanner his laundry," Ma said, pushing past him and setting the basket down. Her eyes met Jedediah's. She was creating a distraction, another body in the room, another complication. Croft was not impressed. He pointed his gun into the darkness of the cellar. "I'll ask one last time. Who are you?" Ilara appeared at the top of the stairs. She was a vision from a nightmare. Her apron was stained black-red. Her hair was matted with sweat. Her face was streaked with grime. And in her hand, she held the small, dark bottle. Croft's gun didn't waver. He didn't know who she was. "Well, what have we here?" "The town herbalist, Ilara Vance. What are you doing in the tanner's cellar?" "I'm treating a patient, Mr. Croft," Ilara said, her voice shaking only slightly. Croft's eyes lit up. "A patient? Is he? Big fella? Answers to Hestine?" "My patient," Ilara said, stepping onto the tannery floor, "is the tanner's stock." This confused him. "His stock?" "A hide, Mr. Croft. A very, very valuable hide. It came in yesterday from the fort, from a cow that dropped dead for no reason. A cow that was sick." Jedediah's eyes went wide. He started to understand. "I don't care about your sick cows," Croft said, advancing on her. Harlan moved to flank her. "I'm searching that cellar." "I wouldn't," Ilara said, holding up the bottle. "You know what wool sorter's fever is, Mr. Croft? They call it anthrax. It's a tiny thing, lives in the hide, in the hair, breathes into the air. You breathe it in, and your lungs fill with blood. You're dead in 2 days, screaming." Croft stopped. He was a man of violence, of guns and knives. He understood things he could see. This was witch talk. But he saw the look of pure, unadulterated terror on Jedediah's face. He saw the grim certainty on Ma Higgins's face. "She's lying, boss," Harlan said, but his voice had lost its edge. He had, in fact, heard of such things. "Am I?" Ilara said. She unstoppered the bottle. A foul, grey powder was inside. "This is the only thing that can fight it. A poultice of silverleaf and other things. I was down there trying to contain it, trying to burn it, but you've kicked up the dust." She took a step toward him. Croft instinctively took a step back. "You smell it, don't you?" Ilara whispered, her eyes wide, playing the part of the half-mad herbalist. "That sick smell? Those are the spores. They're in the air, on your clothes. You've been breathing them since you walked in." Harlan backed away, pulling his bandana over his nose. "Boss, let's get out of here. This ain't right." Croft was trapped. His reputation was built on fear. But now he was afraid. Afraid of something he couldn't shoot. He looked at Ilara, a small, unarmed woman who was now holding his entire gang at bay with a bottle of dust. "You're lying," he said. But it was a question. "Am I?" Ilara said. "Search the cellar, please. Go down. Kick the hides. Take a deep, deep breath. He's not down there, but it is. And if you go down, you'll bring it up. You'll spread it all over this town. All over your men. You'll be dead before you reach the county line." "This is a trick," Croft insisted, but he was arguing with himself now. He looked at Jedediah. "Is she telling the truth, Tanner?" Jedediah, seeing his opening, nodded frantically. "It's true! The hide! From the fort. I told them not to send it. It's the plague. She's saving us. Saving the whole town. We have to burn the whole tannery," Ma Higgins added, her eyes wide. "It's the only way." This was the final straw. Croft was not going to die in a burning, plagued building for a man who wasn't even there. "You," he hissed at Ilara. "You're crazy." "I'm an herbalist," she said. "I know what kills, and I know what saves. Now which one are you, Mr. Croft? The dead man, or the one who walks away?" The standoff was broken, not by a word, but by a sound. From the other end of town, a muffled whoomp, a sound of ignition. Then a bright orange light flickered against the windows of the tannery. A new voice screamed from the street. "Fire! Fire at the saloon! The whiskey's caught!" Shadow, the stable hand, had done his work. Seeing the standoff at the tannery, knowing the whisper network had failed to fully distract Croft, he had taken the final, desperate gamble. He had accidentally kicked over a lantern in the saloon's back room, right next to 3 barrels of Frontier whiskey. The effect was instantaneous. My men!" One of Croft's other men, Pike, yelled, running toward the tannery. "The saloon's going up, and our horses. They're tied to the rail." Croft's dilemma was absolute. On one hand, a dark cellar full of invisible, witch-like death. On the other, a very real, very visible fire that was about to consume his horses, his supplies, and all the town's liquor. His men made the choice for him. They were already running, their fear of the invisible plague instantly replaced by their fear of the visible fire. "Boss, the horses!" Harlan yelled, forgetting the spores, and bolted for the door. Silas Croft was left standing alone, facing Ilara, Jedediah, and Ma Higgins. He was a general without an army. He looked at the cellar. He looked at the fire. He looked at Ilara. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He knew he'd been beaten. He didn't know how, but he knew it. The woman's story was too perfect. The fire was too convenient. "This ain't over," he snarled, holstering his gun. "I'll be back for him, and I'll be back for you." "The town will be here," Elara said, her voice finally dropping from its manic pitch to a cold, flat statement. "But I'd hurry, Mr. Croft. That fire looks hot." He gave her one last look, a promise of a future reckoning, and then he turned and ran, bellowing at his men. Elara, Ma, and Jedediah stood in the tannery, listening to the shouts, the crashing of buckets, and the panicked whinnying of horses. The entire town, once frozen in fear, was now a swarm of activity, all of it focused on the saloon. The distraction was total. "Shadow," Ma Higgins said, a rare, brilliant smile on her face. "That boy, he's going to need a raise." Elara didn't smile. She ran to the cellar. Hastine was sitting up. He had heard it all, the shouting, the talk of fire. "It is time?" he asked. He was weak. The effort of sitting had drained him. "It's past time," Elara said. "Jedediah, your wagon, the one you use for the finished hides. Hitch it, now." "My wagon?" "They're all at the saloon. The alley is clear." "Ma, can you—" "I'll watch the street," Ma said, grabbing a bucket as if to join the fire brigade. "But you have minutes. Once that fire is out, Croft's anger will come back, and he'll be looking for a scapegoat." It was a blur of frantic, whispered activity. Jedediah, his fear replaced by a manic, adrenaline-fueled purpose, hitched his old mule to the wagon in the back alley. Elara and Jedediah, together, practically carried the tall, heavy chief out of the cellar and into the back of the wagon. He was in agony. Every step was a fresh torment. But he never made a sound. He just gritted his teeth, his hand clutching the wound Elara had packed. Elara threw a dozen foul-smelling, uncured hides over him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It is a good smell," Hastine rasped. "It smells of life." "Jed," Elara said, "you have to drive him. Take him north, to the dry riverbed. You know the one. His men will be looking for him. They'll find him." "Me?" Jedediah's courage evaporated. I can't leave. My tannery—" "Your tannery," Elara said gently, "is either full of anthrax or it's not. Either way, Croft is going to burn it to the ground before he leaves, just to be sure. You have nothing left here, Jed, except your life. Go." Jedediah looked at his shop. He looked at the man in the wagon, the man whose wife had saved his wife. A life for a life. The debt was being paid in full. He nodded, his face grim. A life for a life. He climbed onto the wagon seat. Elara ran back into her shop, emerging a moment later with a cloth bundle. She pressed it into Hastine's hand. "More willow bark, for the fever. More penicillium, for the wound. Clean the linen in a running stream. Do not let it fester." Hastine looked at her. His hand opened. He pressed something small, hard, and cool into her palm. "For the one who flies unseen," he whispered. "The dilyehe, the treetop running bird. You are small, but you see all." He was delirious again, but his words were clear. Elara closed her hand around it. It was a small, perfectly carved piece of turquoise. A bird. "Go," she said to Jedediah. The tanner snapped the reins, and the wagon, its wheels creaking, rolled silently down the dirt alley and out into the desert, just as the sun began to hint at the horizon. Elara Vance stood in the alley, watching it go. The sky was turning a pale, bruised purple. The shouting from the main street was dying down. The fire was being contained. She walked back to her shop. She opened the turquoise bird in her palm. It was beautiful. She put it in her apron pocket, where it lay, heavy and cool against her leg. She unbolted her door, went inside, and began to sweep the floor. There was dust everywhere, and as she swept, she began to hum. It was a quiet, tuneless sound, a sound of a woman who had faced down the devil and was now simply tidying up. Sheriff Brody left town before noon, his horse pointed east. He didn't even take his spare shirts from Ma Higgins' laundry line. Silas Croft and his men, their horses singed, their faces black with soot, rode out an hour later. They rode west, toward the mountains, still following the first false trail. Croft never even looked at the tannery. He had been beaten, and he knew it. Redemption Creek settled back into its dusty, quiet existence. But something had changed. The quiet herbalist was still quiet. But now, when she walked down the street, people no longer saw a small, unassuming woman. They saw the woman who had faced Silas Croft with a bottle of dust and won. Ilara continued to grind her herbs, but she kept a small, turquoise bird on the shelf above her mortar, a reminder that the greatest victories are not won with the loudness of a gunshot, but with the quiet, persistent, unyielding power of a root, a leaf, and a woman who knew how to use them. In the end, it wasn't a bullet that saved Chief Hastine. It was a bluff. It was the courage of Jedediah, the whispers of Ma Higgins, the daring of Shadow, and the profound, quiet strength of Ilara Vance. Her story is a reminder that the Wild West wasn't just won by men with 6 guns. It was built by the silent, the overlooked, and the brave. The ones who knew that knowledge of the earth, of human nature, of fear, was the most powerful weapon of all. They didn't always make the history books, but their stories are the ones that truly tell the tale of how the West was really won. Thank you for watching. If this story of courage and quiet strength moved you, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear a different kind of Western, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more true stories of the hidden heroes and forgotten legends of the Old West. We'll see you in the next story.